Tonight, the trade war sent the deal for new F-35 fighter jets into a tailspin, new PM Carney's first impressions, and conservatives scramble as they tumble in the polls. From Montreal, this is Night Talk, episode 25. I'm Gary MacDonald.
And still in Tulum, Mexico, I am Eddie Tekalik.
Well, let's begin with jets in a tailspin. It's a $19 billion question in the midst of the Trump trade war. Should Canada cancel its deal with Boeing to buy 88 F-35 fighter jets? With trade tensions rising and growing concerns over military spending, some argue this deal is a waste of taxpayer money, while others see it as critical for Canada's defense and NATO commitments. Is this a smart investment or a costly mistake? Should that money be redirected to healthcare, education, or infrastructure? How might scrapping the deal affect Canada's relationship with NATO and its military alliances? Are the F-35 still the best option, or should Canada consider more cost-effective alternatives, perhaps a domestically produced jet? And would canceling the deal give Canada more leverage in the ongoing trade war with the U.S.? Eddie, this is becoming quite the issue in a whole number of ways here.
Yeah.
It's a $19 billion deal. It's been in the works for years. The current fleet of jets, they're approaching, I think, 40 years old.
44 years.
Yeah. And being held together, I'm sure, with duct tape and a few other things.
Well, only 40%, as a matter of fact, only 40% are active and ready to go. The other 60% are not serviceable right now.
Yeah, and therein lies the issue with a lot, not only the Air Force, but the Navy and the Army as well. A lot of their equipment is old, well past its normal lifetime, and here we are. And it's taken 5 or 6 years. The discussion started back quite a while ago with Boeing about the F-35s.
Right.
But on the other side of it, here we have, we're buying from a country that now is squeezing us in every which way, and its president is talking about taking us over as the 51st state. So, are there viable alternatives? Well, there is a list of other countries, and I'm sure maybe that might have come up in the discussions that the Prime Minister had during his meetings this week in Europe. But you've had a chance to look at some of the alternatives that are out there, and you sent me a message on it earlier today. You seem to be pretty impressed with what you saw.
Yeah, you know what I mean. This you and I have been speaking pretty much every second show about Canada's capability to defend itself, and also to NATO's commitments. And I think both you and I have been quite critical in the fact that, for at least the last decade plus, we seem to have fallen off the bandwagon when it comes to supporting our troops with state-of-the-art and functional equipment. That's something that you and I have been on very regularly on our shows, right? Now, in terms of the F-35, as I mentioned in support of your statement about the condition of the existing Hornets, the F-18 Hornets that we have, 40% of them are in a state where they can effectively be deployed from the get-go. So there's an order to get the planes airborne, then guaranteed. They'll get in the air and support whatever NATO mandates or Canadian government requires. Then on the other hand, 60% of them at this particular point in time are non-functional. They're not ready to go, which is a huge chunk of your Air Force to be grounded effectively. So we're looking at the F-35 solution, which I think was tabled 6 years ago, or it was heavy discussions with Boeing 6 years ago. And I think there was an order of 76 placed, and the Canadian government is on the hook by law for, I think, 16 of them. So whatever we do, we're going to end up with 16 of them. Okay. Now, the question of, well, what do we do with the rest of them? Well, you know what? Canada is a sovereign nation. Canada, as what we considered a rich country in the world, part of the G20, part of the G7, we effectively have to have a capable military, and a lot of that has to do with air support. And of course, our fleets are getting old, 43, 44 years of age, and they're getting old. They have been upgraded with the most up to date avionics, but as an aircraft fighter itself, it's getting antiquated. I was curious to see what the Europeans are using, and you know what? There's quite a multitude of different manufacturers out of Europe that would be able to provide us with very compact, combat capable aircraft, new ones, in fact, that would give the F-35 a run for its money with its technology. We're looking at the EU Typhoon, which is one aircraft, the French Rafale, the Gripen. Then you have the F-35s and whatnot that most of the European countries are using. I forget which one Saab makes, but that's the Swedish one. The one's very predominant with Sweden. I think that's the Gripen. 100% of the Air Force, 90 aircraft are made by them. And you know what it comes down to? What are we going to do with the money that we may not spend with the rest of the budget for the F-35 in the event we decide to scrap that? What are we going to do with the money? Yeah, things can go to healthcare and the other areas where, Canada's not too bad at, but needs improvement, healthcare, whatever you want to put the money towards. You either do that and leave yourself vulnerable to having to depend on the United States for defense, which, we're learning very quickly since the 20th of January, we cannot depend on Donald Trump and our neighbors down south to defend us. So as a sovereign nation, my opinion is we do have to invest the necessary money in acquiring new aircraft. And, when you're looking at the base model of the F-35, which runs at about 80 million to $100 million for the base model. This is not the model that can take off. This is a runway model. It can't lift off from the standstill or anything like that. You want anything fancy, you got to tack on another $50-60 million per aircraft. And the aircraft comes without weaponry. Okay? The European models comes with weaponry. Not only that, if we stay with the F-35, we are stuck with buying American weaponry for it to be compatible with the aircraft to actually use them. Okay, so to be on the hook with the Americans no matter what. And here lies the problem with the F-35. We're stuck with 16 of them by contract. Okay,
Right.
So that means we have to have the training, we have to have the personnel, we have to have the mechanics, we have to have the hangars specifically designed for F-35s wherever they're deployed, and we'd also have to have everything in parallel for any other aircraft or any kind of fighter jet we decide to get. So you're doubling the effort. So we're kind of stuck with the 16. Maybe get creative and sell them to somebody else and just stay with the European type model. So there's all kinds of options for us. But whichever way you look at it, it is going to be an expensive venture no matter what you do. I know many of us with what's happening with the United States and us having to purchase directly from the U.S. is not something that a lot of Canadians are favorable of. But by the same token, I think a lot of Canadians understand and realize that we do need a military capability in Canada. So, the options are there for a European model. The Saab is very top notch out there, and it comes with weaponry, and they're capable with NATO aircraft. So, that might be the most cheapest way to move forward and wean ourselves away from American dependency, just like the Europeans have.
Yeah,
I said a lot, but there's a lot to be said.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been thinking about this over the last couple of days when it really seemed to, pardon the pun, take flight as an issue. And the military brass in the Air Force don't want to have dual operating systems, 16 of these type and whatever of another type. And I get it because of the training for the pilots and keeping the pilots up on hours on both, certified on both planes. Your maintenance people being trained on both, doubling up on spare parts for different models. So I get where the military is coming from in that perspective. But it appears that we really are on the hook for at least 16.
16.
Yeah. And I had a discussion while I was talking to Wayne this afternoon, and we were talking about this. And, he said, well, if we had to, maybe we could just set the 16 as a squadron and have dedicated people for that squadron, and then training and dedicating the others to whatever other plane we end up buying. Yeah, you could do that, and of course I'm thinking, well, okay, we do that, get the majority of the pilots certified on the new jet. And then once we do that, start moving the pilots from the F-35s over to be certified on the new jet, put the order in for the other 16 of those jets, and sell off the F-35s. I'm sure there will be a willing buyer somewhere for the F-35s.
Sure.
Yeah. And, and we may take a bit of a hit on it. But, here's the thing. How do we know now, going down the road and experiencing what we've experienced in the last 2 months, how do we know that there will be spare parts available for the F-35s going forward? How do we know who's going to be in control? And, as far as supplying equipment, training, upgrading of computer systems, and all of those sorts of things, we cannot rely on the U.S. any longer.
Correct.
Now, that may change 100 years from now, but I'm telling you, after what we've gone through so far, and it's not over yet, and we have 3.5 more years of this, or 3 3/4 more years of this, and who knows what comes after him, then we just cannot count on that. Now, the other side of it is, the question is, why not build one domestically? Well, we did have the Avro Arrow, which was the most advanced fighter of any in the world, and that was back.
Even the Americans were afraid of us when we had that aircraft.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it was scrapped. And where did a lot of that talent go? Ended up going with NASA on the space shuttle program.
Right.
And of course, when you look at the space shuttle and you look at pictures of the old Avro Arrow, there's a lot in common.
The Delta Wing,
yes. The overall design. So, can we do it? Sure, we can. I remember when we built the 12 frigates for the Navy, and 3 of them were built here in Quebec, and the other 9 were built in St. John. Yeah. And there were, on the first couple of ships, there were a lot of delays, there were cost overruns, and a lot of questions being asked as to, what's going on here. Well, I had one engineer from Scotland explain it, and he made sense. Canada at that point had not built a warship in, 40, 50 years. Mm-hmm. And so they were starting from scratch. And on top of it, these ships at the time were extremely advanced on, from a technological standpoint, top notch. Yeah. And so you had all of that coming together. And when you start with basically a prototype, even the auto manufacturers run into this problem. And the fact is that everything looks good on paper, but then when you start actually putting it together, there are things that are going to come up, and you have to address those. Once those ships were, once they got the first couple out of the way, at least in St. John, it was just flowing nicely, just smoothly. There were still a few problems in Quebec, but in Quebec, they were building them the old way, whereas in St. John, they were building them in sections inside, moving that section outside and putting it together like a model or a Lego. So it was really interesting to watch. But those ships, I had the opportunity to tour the HMCS Halifax, which was the first frigate commissioned. The day before commissioning, I had the opportunity to go out on sea trials. And wow. It was just overpowering what that ship could do.
Right.
Really. And then in the newsroom, we used to have a scanner on, and we'd have the Fundy traffic, which was all of the marine traffic in the bay. Mm-hmm. And 4 o'clock in the morning, the fishermen were out in the bay, and they had this thing out on sea trials. And all they would say was, "What the hell was that?" Just a whoosh. You would not believe how fast that ship could start from a standing stop and be at full speed, and then come to a standing stop from full speed in, I think it was 2 ship lengths. It was just, and the Americans were drilling. They took it down through the eastern U.S. seaboard to some of the bases down there, and they were drilling over it. So we can do it. We have the ability to do it.
Yeah, so suffice it to say, if you look back at our history in terms of building military capable equipment and technology, we've done it in the past. Based on your experiences in our warships that we built through Canadian design, we can do it. Now, here is the problem. Now we've got a question of time. Our aircraft are aging. I mean, like I said, we've only got 40% of them that are combat ready, and as time progresses, it's going to be less and less and less. How much time and how much capacity and how much time do we have to go to the drawing board, design one, prototype it, and get it combat ready by the time we in Canada actually can build up our Air Force? So it's going to take some time. So, is there a way to get the best of both worlds and getting our engineers started on such a mandate, such an effort now, so that in 10, 15 years, we'd have on the table or ready to roll out combat-ready aircraft that will serve our country, and also, maybe European interests might want to purchase our aircraft too at the same time, right? But it's also a question of time. And in the meantime, while we're building this thing, look at a European option, right? Saab had already identified that. And they were the runners up to the F-35 aircraft, by the way. Saab had actually committed that these aircraft will be built in Canada by Canadians at Saab factories on Canadian soil. So that's not a bad win-win-win scenario. And in the meantime, build and design our own aircraft. So there are a lot of options out there besides having to put all our eggs in our basket and rely on the American government for their American military firepower and aid, Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And the other part of it is we should now take the responsibility of developing a military assembly line industry in Canada, and for our own use, but also, for our NATO allies, other than our neighbor south of the border, because they have their own things, and they think it's the greatest. So, and that's good for the economy as well. Look at the jobs that would be created. Yes, so Joe says, cancel the order if only for the following reason. It's claimed the jet's 8 million lines of code hide a backdoor for remote deactivation, giving the U.S. ability to brick the jets.
Wow. You know what? I think he's right. I mean, that didn't dawn on me, but yeah, I think he's right.
Yeah,
Can you
because
imagine Elon with his little 16-year-olds go online and gain access to this kind of technology? Oh
plus
boy.
they're following them all over the world with, through
Yeah.
GPS and Starlink. So that's I never
Good point.
even thought about that. I haven't heard that, Joe, but gee, thanks for bringing that up. Like, wow.
Good one.
Yeah, I'll look into that some more. But oh, I really think that we should, one of the programs that, whether it's a liberal government or a conservative government after the next election, is to bring in some of the masterminds. I mean, we have various companies and into technology and what have you. So
Right.
let's start planting the seeds and become self-sufficient, as far as the military side of things are concerned. And we then have something to offer to allies or some of the smaller countries who are not members of NATO, and
Mm-hmm.
we can sell it, we can provide it, and we advance all of the associated industries feeding into it, especially from a technological standpoint. I mean, look at who had the BlackBerry. Where did that
Yeah.
come from first, right? Where did the iPhone's cousin, if you will, where was that built,
The older
conceived and
cousin,
built?
much older cousin. Yeah, in
Yeah,
Canada.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, we have the people with the ability to do it, and I think that really has to be a focal point now. That's one of the things, bringing down the interprovincial trade barriers, so things are moving back and forth quickly and freely, and we start developing those sorts of abilities to manufacture things. Now, do we use this? And this is the other side of it. Do we use it as leverage in dealing with the current U.S. president and the trade wars?
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean in terms of leverage? Us going elsewhere?
Right, canceling the deal and just saying, okay, we'll take the 16, or maybe even trying to buy out the 16 so we don't have to end up taking them at all.
Yeah, or you know what? We are on the hook for the 16. It doesn't mean that we can continue being on the hook and commit to our contract, and in the meantime already have a buyer that gets delivery of these units right out of the assembly lines. So there's all kinds of options here. Take and buy them from the Americans at the existing price they've given us based on the 16, and throw in another 20% and sell them to somebody else who needs them. Like there's all kinds of wonderful possibilities here for us to again wean ourselves away from the United States. And okay, so can we use this as leverage to try to get something out of the Trump administration? Oh boy, I don't know about that one, Gary. Even if we believe we can get something out of Trump as a result of pushing against him, he's just going to throw a tantrum and come up with something else to throw against us, right? So, I'd say cancel the order, keep the 16. We have every right to cancel the rest of the order because we're not on the hook for that contractually. And send the United States a clear message. You know what? Thanks, but no thanks. We kind of got your message over the last 8 weeks that we're obviously not your preferred choice in terms of economic partners and friends up in the north that protect your border. You know what? We'll take our business elsewhere, because everywhere you'll look, whether you look at the Wall Street Journal and you look at some of the other reputable media outlets in North America and the world, everybody is saying the only way that you can actually send a clear-cut message to the Trump administration in the pocketbook. And the more you kick him in the pocketbook, the more he's going to have to explain himself, or his senators, or the governors of the states, or the people in their chambers in Congress are going to have to be accountable to their voters at some point. And look, the midterms come up in what, a year and a half or so. Everything he's doing right now is just damaging in terms of regaining control of not regaining, but sustaining control of their house. So yeah, you know what? Let's send them a clear-cut message. I don't think we should use it as leverage. I think we make a decision and move forward with it. Let them come begging us to come back to them, and that's my point on that.
I'm thinking about the other question which we raised, and that is, given our current economic challenges, should we find other ways to invest that money, such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure? And I'm probably not going to be popular with a lot of people, but the answer from me would be no. Yeah. This money, we're barely meeting, well, we're not even meeting our commitments to NATO yet. And this is going to help. But still, that's a very, 2% is a bare minimum, any way you look at it. And we need, first of all, we need more people in the military, and they need top-notch equipment to do the jobs that we're expecting them to do. And, and right now, as hard-pressed as the military is for people, over the last couple of years, look at how they have been pressed into aid to the civil power with flooding and wildfires. That can't go on a regular basis. You cannot, Ottawa cannot depend on the military to be backstopping on these natural disasters. Yes, there are times when they can do it, and the expertise they bring in is, top notch. Yeah. But when you're spread thin and your equipment is, just being held together by a wing and a prayer, you don't have a lot to offer, really.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at existing morale base. I mean, morale for the existing soldiers is very important, Gary. We talk about this very often. And you know what? From a recruitment perspective, what have we got today that will actually recruit individuals to join the military forces in Canada? Now, can you imagine the recruitment efforts in clearly stating we're going to be bringing these new aircraft in, especially with the renewed patriotism in Canada, and basically advertise we are bringing in Saab aircraft from Europe, and we're going to be replacing our entire fleet, and we're going to be requiring engineers, we're going to be requiring A, B, C, and D from a support perspective. I mean, that there in itself is a wonderful recruitment tool in terms of promoting what Canada is going to be doing to secure our military and upgrade the capability of our military. So, recruitment is a challenge here because I don't think the Canadian military has got anything to offer the bright minds of our country and those that want to defend our country. What you're going to give them a couple of knives and spears to go into battle with, or are you going to arm them with state-of-the-art equipment, right? So I think this would, from a strategic perspective in filling up our military ranks and personnel, projects such as whatever we decide in terms of what company we're going to go with, let's just say for argument's sake, Saab over in Europe to manufacture these airplanes here, I can assure you there's going to be a lot better success in recruiting the youngsters to join the military for the reason that you had mentioned and I had mentioned. And while we're at it, you can also think about all the spin-off industries that would be created if these aircraft were actually manufactured in Canada in parallel to our efforts in designing our own aircraft. I mean, there is so much spin-off contributions to the economy just by actually doing this and not just throwing our money to the Americans and they're going to do whatever the hell they want. and then hold us on the hook for maintenance contracts, for weaponry, and everything else. So, there's a lot of positive that we can take out of this and get our military ranks back up to where we need them to be.
Absolutely. And let's see, Joe is weighing in. Cancel the order completely. Trump doesn't abide by contracts or rules. Why should we?
Good
Bingo.
Point. Good point.
Yes. And sure, you end up in court, but I don't know. Like, to me, sometimes you have to get out of a deal that's going south, and it's going to cost you money to get out of it, but it's money well spent, because down the road, if you follow along, then you're going to get stuck with all kinds of extra costs and perhaps ending up, short of equipment. And here's the thing, as under-equipped or poorly equipped, however you want to describe it, as our military is and has been over the years, Canadians have a really solid reputation of being able to do a lot of things, win battles, with very little as far as equipment is concerned.
Yeah.
They have a really good reputation. We just do it. We just make it happen. And, which is great, but you mentioned morale. Like, how bad does your morale get, especially if you're out on the battle, like in Afghanistan, for example? You don't have a whole lot to work with. Your very basic stuff, some of which is, just being piecemealed together. And you watch the Americans coming in, or other countries, with, new equipment, top-notch stuff. So, they have a problem with recruiting and retention. Therein lies the answer. And yes, you're right, Eddie. A lot of brilliant young minds have either gone in and then didn't re-up. They were gone into private industry, or they're not even giving the military a second thought.
Yeah.
And they're off to either the private sector here in Canada or the private sector elsewhere, whoever happens to be offering the best salary and the best benefits, And that's only natural. The more I think about it, the more I am leaning with Joe, like, just cancel it.
Yeah.
Prepare like a fund to cover off whatever the legal cost is going to be.
Well, you know what? I mean, Trump is an expert at tying things up in courts for decades, for years and a decade. You know what? We can do the same thing.
Yep.
Tie him up in the courts. And it would have to go to an international court, of course, because we're talking about an international deal here. How much sympathy do you think Donald Trump is going to get from international anything? Right? Let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah, not very much at this stage of the game. Yeah, that's for sure. So this is something that we really have to keep an eye on. This is a huge, huge decision coming up, and whether it's made before an election call or after the election call, it's something that has to be addressed almost immediately. It has to be a top priority as to what we're going to do and how we're going to achieve that end. But I'm leaning on the side of cancel the contract.
Yeah, and I along with Joe agree with you.
And I would bet that. And who did you say number 2 was? Saab?
Yeah, there was Saab, and then the European Typhoon, which is a consortium of European countries that created.
Right. So either one of those, and for some reason I'm thinking Saab probably could pivot the fastest and start getting planes to us within a short time span, at least getting some replacement planes to us while they're gearing up a factory here to
Exactly.
to push the rest of them out. There are ways. It's not a question of don't tell me why you can't do it. Let's figure out how we can do it and make it work.
Yeah.
And
Well, here's the whole thing, Gary. We talked about this last week. How much red tape have we been going through over the last 10 years just to do anything in the military? You get everybody getting involved, everybody putting their hands in the cookie jar, and nothing gets done. You know what? You had said it very clearly last week. That's enough. Let's just get it done. Make a decision. You stop with the damn politics here. We're trying to defend our country against a growing threat in the United States, and we want to be able to contribute to our NATO commitments, whether the United States is part of that force or not. We need to be able to do it and not piddle and paddle and put multiple committees in place to review this and review that. It's a requirement. We need it. Let's stop making politics out of this thing. And like you were saying, get it done one way or the other.
all right. I think we've settled that one for sure.
Yes. My fan club here is giving me a thumbs up, so they agree too.
Okay. Coming up, Prime Minister Mark Carney's first impressions. Eddie and I hope you are enjoying the show, and we appreciate your support through your likes, subscriptions, and sharing of our videos. And if you feel so inclined, you could buy us a coffee. Simply click on the link below in the description, and Eddie and I will appreciate and thank you for your support. All right, now that I've put the hat away, let's turn our attention to our new Prime Minister.
I, Mark Carney, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Prime Minister.
Mark Carney has been on the job for 6 days. Carney and his new cabinet were sworn in Friday afternoon. That was followed with the first cabinet meeting, and during that cabinet meeting, he announced he had signed a prime ministerial directive to scrap the controversial consumer portion of the carbon tax effective April 1st. Orders in council were later put in place to carry that through, but that doesn't totally eliminate the industrial side of the tax. Now, we squeezed in meetings over the weekend with Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Quebec Premier François Legault, took in the St. Patrick's Day parade here in Montreal on Sunday, and then jumped his jet and left for France and Britain for meetings with the French President, King Charles, and the British Prime Minister. Then he headed back to Canada and stopped in the north yesterday to announce investments in the military's Arctic presence, including an Australian-developed early warning radar system and investment in new civilian infrastructure. Oh, and what about a meeting with the U.S. President?
With respect to the President, I don't have plans to go to the United States. I look forward to speaking to him at the appropriate moment. Thank you. When we get to the economics, and the President is a successful business person and deal maker, we're his largest client in so many industries. As the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Industry, Monsieur Leblanc and Monsieur Champagne, have made this point, and clients expect respect and working together in a proper commercial way.
And later, I think it was up north yesterday, he was asked again about a visit with the U.S. President. And again, he was very, very diplomatic in his response. But he's making it very clear that he's not going to the White House.
Yes.
He's going to do it over the phone or, but on his terms. And that is when the U.S. President starts showing our country some respect. And then he's ready to go. which is really very interesting as far as the approach and how Trump, if you notice, Eddie, Trump's been very quiet as far as Carney is concerned. He took at Polyev last night in a Fox News interview, and the word stupidly was used in his description of Polyev. So, and then he says, I'd rather deal with a liberal.
Yeah.
There's Carney is, I think, really surprising me in the way he's playing this, and the more I watch it, how it's scoping out, the more I think he's on the right track. I think I heard one person today say, it seems that Trump realizes that Carney's, been in the private sector, and now he's in, this is his first run at politics in much the same way as the U.S. president's first run 8 years ago. I think the consensus is growing that the U.S. president respects someone who has been in the business world like that, and so far has been very, very low-key, calm, diplomatic in how he's responding to questions about any meetings. One thing for certain is Prime Minister Carney seems to be smart enough not to be sucked into a public gang-up in the Oval Office.
Yeah. And I think your brother, when he was on the show with us last week, we were questioning whether or not Carney not being in the political landscape, would that actually be an impediment to his capability to lead the country? And we're kind of tossing it back and forth. And I remember your brother said that we have to understand, being the governor of the Bank of Canada and governor of the Bank of England, in that kind of position, he's dealing with politicians and politics all the time. So, once we kind of realized what your brother said, we said, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. Now, just watching Carney this week, after he got sworn in, and what he's been doing over in Europe, and what I've been hearing in the news about him in Europe, you know what? I think your brother is absolutely right. And in terms of his positioning and stance, and kind of not even bothering to comment on anything that Trump is saying right now, it just shows you that the guy has political skills, regardless if he was running for a political office or not. So I think your brother was bang right. Absolutely. In my opinion, he's so far so good. I wasn't entirely sure about him. I think you and I summarized last week's show with saying, would the real Mark Carney please stand up? I think that this week, over the last 4 or 5 days, he's slowly starting to stand up and show his mettle and what he is all about and what he's capable of. And I think it's the capable of part that's most important to me, at least.
Yeah, we have a couple of comments coming in. Good for Carney. Must have been coached by Macron. Sorry. Yeah, they seem to the B-roll that I saw of him being greeted by the French president. They really seem to have a good working relationship, very friendly, and it seemed very genuine compared to the usual press the flesh and nod a smile and nod in the direction of the camera kind of thing. So, okay, let's see. We've got another comment here. And Trump is attempting reverse psychology. I've heard that floated as well, that, foreign interference. There's a new meaning to it.
Go ahead and say it. I see that smirk on your face because, Gary, I thought the same thing when I saw the various news clips of what he was actually attempting to do. So go ahead.
Well, yeah. It's just well, it's the situation we have been dealt and that we are dealing with. So what more can I say? And what more really do I need to say about that one?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, speaking of the Conservatives, I would imagine there's a bit of a scramble at the moment in the Conservative war room as they prepare for a snap election. And that call is probably just days away.
Yeah.
The Conservatives have watched their fortunes plummet in recent polls, and what was once a double-digit lead over the Liberals has evaporated with the resignation of Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney walking away with the Liberal leadership. So how bad is it for the Conservatives? Well, let's have a look.
Yeah, they continue struggling. There we go.
Yeah. And this is from Canada 338, and they put a bunch of polls together, and this was done on updated March 18th, and you can see that the Liberals and the Conservatives were in a dead heat, and that was with a margin of error of plus or minus 4%.
Right.
And the NDP down to 11%, the Bloc at 7%. And of course, the Green Party not really coming in there at all. So then we have this Angus Reid poll that was released yesterday. Today's the 19th. Yeah. And this one shows the Liberals in the lead, and they have a 5 percentage point lead over the Conservatives.
Yeah.
Now, up until this one, a couple of the polls, including an Angus Reid poll that I saw from last week, had them pretty much in a dead heat, much the same as Canada 338. So, but look at the NDP, down to 9%, single digits.
Yeah.
Single digits.
And I have here Ipsos in front of me, and Ipsos is showing a 6-point lead. Liberals at 42. Conservatives at 38, and the NDP at 10. So pretty much all the polls and the poll trackers that I've kind of looked at today are pretty much everything you're showing here are showing very clear-cut things. The NDP slowly but surely is actually becoming an irrelevant party, which is unfortunate to see where they compared to where they stood a decade ago. And Liberals just keep on clawing up. And I mean, you're looking at polls being taken after Mr. Carney got sworn in, and the gap just seems to increase on a daily basis, as a matter of fact. So, you know what? It's something you predicted some time ago. A snap election should be called. And I think we're going to see that.
I think we will. Everybody is kind of pointing to maybe on Sunday, because remember the House of Commons is supposed to go back into session on Monday, the 24th.
Oh, Monday already. Oh, that's right. We're in the March.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the speculation is starting to really build around a Sunday election call, because he's meeting with the premiers virtually on Friday, I believe. And I thought he has something else on Saturday. But Sunday seems to be, and that would put us into an election in late April. But here's another interesting thing. How committed are you to your party choice? And if you look here, you'll see for the Conservatives, 66% of those who say they will support the Conservatives are fully committed to supporting the Conservatives. Uh-huh. You've got 24% fairly committed, 7% not really committed, and then a very small percentage, looks like 3%, not committed at all. You come over to the Liberal side, 49% of those who say they would vote Liberal, 49% are committed. So the Conservatives have a stronger commitment. But by the same token, the Liberals were basically, even though Trudeau was still there up until last Thursday, they were still pretty much without a leader in the midst of their leadership race.
Right.
So I can see that 38% being not fully committed because they didn't know who would be in there, right?
Right.
And then 30 or 10% say that they're not very committed, and 3% say not committed at all. And of course, the NDP, 30% fully committed, 49% fairly committed, 16% not very committed, and 5% not committed at all. So, and I kind of brought this in right away, combining our segment looking at the PM's busy week or 6 days, and first impressions of them. Well, the polls are showing, at least especially this Angus Reid one, the latest Angus Reid one, showing exactly the sort of impression that people are starting to get of Carney because they've watched him, over the weeks leading up to the actual leadership vote. So I think that, if you did a poll in another week and Carney keeps going on the track he's going on now, I think you would see that committed, fully committed would be higher and probably in the same range as what the Conservative fully committed is now.
Yeah.
So let's go back to our new Prime Minister for a minute now that we've seen what's happening as far as the polls are concerned. And let's talk about first impressions, and your first impressions of what you've witnessed so far over the last 6 days.
Well, as I mentioned, complimenting your brother's statement that him not being in the political landscape and he was in the private sector, what might work against him, and your brother outlined that in the roles that he had, that he'd be dealing with politicians all the time, so he does have the experience. Yeah, I think your brother was absolutely right. From what I've seen in terms of the way he's presented himself while he was over in France, while he was out in the UK, and dealing with reporter questions, and not necessarily North American reporter questions. He's dealing with European reporter questions, which are sometimes a lot more direct, and they just don't let somebody get away with a blanket response. He responded very well, very eloquently, very direct, and he made sure he answered a question that had some with an answer that had some substance and fact to it. So the way he handled himself just with the European leaders, I was very impressed with that. He conveyed confidence. He showed leadership, and he showed strength, something that a lot of Canadians are looking for in their leaders: strength. And then, in terms of his commentary on his upcoming plans to speak with Trump, he was very direct. I'm going to do it at my own good time, and without actually saying it, I'm going to do it at my own good time if Trump behaves. Pretty much is what he said. So, good on him to holding his ground with Trump. Congratulations on his winning the campaign, the Liberal leadership campaign, and congratulations for becoming our Prime Minister. And in the first few days that he's been actually in power, I think he's handled himself very well, eloquently, and something a lot of Canadians, I think, can rally behind.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Eddie, with the fact that that he is presenting us, on the international stage in a very prime ministerial way. And I think Canadians are starting to grasp that. And it wouldn't matter if he was a Conservative. Going at it the way he's been going at it has been really very, very, he has that stature of a leader, and and he's coming with, he knows he's going to get a lot thrown at him after, surviving the Bank of Canada and in particular the Bank of England. And he's got a lot of mud, and we'll get into it in a few minutes, a lot of mud being thrown at him over his conflicts of interest and his investments. Mm-hmm. But he's very level, pretty much. In England, he kind of got worked up a little bit by the tone of a question related to that, and then he sort of backed away from it, and that's what a lot of the media pundits picked up on, was his response there. But bearing in mind that here's a guy who is green behind the ears as far as being out on the front line as a politician in the highest office in the country. Mm-hmm. And he's doing okay, and he is tackling the French side of it head on as well.
Yeah,
he's a little choppy, but he's not shying away from responding in French. And there was one question in a news conference on Monday overseas, and he was struggling a bit with it and understanding, and the reporter started to rephrase the question in English, and he said no. Mm-hmm. And said in French, "I understand now." He got his thoughts together and then responded to that question. And so I have to give him full marks that way. And he's been busy. And Doug Ford came out of a meeting with him, saying he had breakfast with him on Saturday morning, and he said, "Hey, he's a good guy. I like him." Mm-hmm. So, he has Doug Ford's approval, at least for the moment. I don't know how Legault made out with him. I haven't really noticed anything one way or the other as to whether Legault offered any sort of thoughts on how the relationship was starting off or how he could see the relationship going. But, he's reaching out. And he's wasting no time. And to do that trip leave here on Sunday, and that would be officially day 2 of his leadership role, and head over to Europe, and especially France, and go to France first and then go to Britain, and talk a little bit about security and military commitments, and the sort of things that would catch a president's ear. Mm-hmm. I think he was very, very shrewd in doing that, and the message that he was sending to a certain president next door to us.
There was a message without actually conveying a message verbally.
Exactly.
Directly. Yeah, that's what I liked about it.
Yeah, exactly. And of course he had, tea and crumpets or whatever with King Charles, which is, yeah. Anyway.
Another subject for another day.
yeah. I won't get into that. Yeah. But, he was right over there, and actually the video I saw of him, meeting Charles actually was smiling, and it didn't look like that forced kind of royal smile. Mm-hmm. He actually looked like he was relaxed and really smiling. It was a sincere smile. So I think for the first 3 or 4 days, 5 days, and then, of course, some of the money that was announced in the North yesterday was money that was already committed, but he was just recommitting it and also tying it into some of the new money and this new radar system, over-the-horizon radar system that they've entered into the deal with Australia on.
Australia,
And that's,
yeah.
yeah. And a lot of the monitoring stations, I guess, are going to be built along the Ontario-US border. But the way it works, it can track up over the horizon and give early warning to any missiles coming from the other side, kind of thing. So replacing the old, what was it, the DEW line it was called, which was part of NORAD at the time. Anyway, I think he's on the right track. It'll be interesting to see what happens once he does pay a visit to the Governor General and the writ is dropped for the election campaign. But let's go back now to the Conservatives, who, first of all, one of the first things they've announced when the campaign hits, there will be no room on the plane or any buses that they're using for media.
That's a first, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And what they're saying is they'll advise everyone where he's going to be, at what time the availability will be, and they're hoping for more local reporters to come out and ask questions, giving them more of a chance because, when you've got a group of reporters traveling with you and they're all filing on deadline or, having to do a quick hit with either of the news channels, they kind of overpower everybody else that's there. So it's certainly, to me, it has nothing to do with trying to give locals a better chance. It has everything to do with really controlling the message.
Yeah.
I mean, that's super control of the message. And also shelters Poilievre to a degree from any missteps that if you have half the plane is loaded with the media and they see you, whatever happens, some stupid thing happens, they're right there and bang, they're all over it like white on rice. So very tight control of the message. This is going to be extremely interesting to see how successful they are with this kind of control of the message. And it'll also be interesting to see if they take a page out of the Republican playbook, and Trump's playbook in particular, as to, do they pick favorites for exclusive interviews or, a quick hit or whatever. Now, I remember back when Harper won election campaign, and Harper had no real love for the media, and they were trailing, and they actually started calling smaller newsrooms across the country. Would you like an exclusive interview with the Prime Minister? Where have you been the last 4 years?
Yeah.
But that's the way they're going to play the game. So this is going to be an interesting exercise overall. Now, I can't wait to see the Liberals' response. I can't see them going the same way as the Conservatives on this. They can have some fun with it and maybe score some points. Let's look at what the Conservatives are doing now to try and start knocking the legs out from Carney, because they're tackling Carney over his financial holdings and potential conflicts of interest, as we said earlier.
We're calling on Mark Carney to immediately disclose all of the assets that he put into his blind trust and releasing his, quote, full and robust conflict of interest management plan, end quote. If Carney has nothing to hide, he should have no problem doing so. We know that he has them on file. Get it done today.
Now, Carney says he's ahead of the game, and his documentation is now under review.
Question with respects to screens related to certain assets as assets go into a blind trust. These are decisions, of course, of the Ethics Commissioner. So, as you know, as you may recall, my assets have been put into a blind trust well in advance of the requirements, so they've been disposed. But what happens is that there's a discussion with the Ethics Commissioner for certain screens around certain issues, and that's a process that is underway. It's a natural process, and of course, it's part of the way our system works, and I very much respect the system. And those screens become public as they're developed.
Now, the thing of it is, Eddie, they've been put in a blind trust, and somebody asked him the other day, well, you know, what did you have before you put it in the blind trust? Well, what difference does it make? Because he's lost all control of it in the blind trust. The trustee can take and sell off those assets and reinvest that money elsewhere.
Right.
So, to me, and Carney doesn't know. He won't know until 4 years from now or 8 years from now, whatever it is, he takes those investments out of the blind trust. It's totally up to the trustee, and the trustee does have to file every year some kind of a statement with the Office of the Ethics Commissioner.
Right.
So everything is there. So to me, asking them, well, okay, well, what did you have? Well, you know what? That was before he became Prime Minister. What business is it of yours as to what he had? Well, it could lead to a potential conflict of interest. Now that it's in the blind trust, he may not even be holding those this time next year or even a month from now. Whatever the trustee does, the trustee does. He doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's just like they're really barking up a tree and there's no squirrel in the tree, in my humble opinion. So the real question is, with all of that crap going on, is can Poilievre and the Conservatives make a comeback? You think? Oh, looks like Eddie's feed is frozen. Okay, so can they make a comeback? Well, right now, Poilievre has blown a double-digit lead. At one point, it was around 20%. And that has really dropped in the last 2 months. So it's going in the wrong direction. And despite him running around of the last 2 weeks or so and starting to make some policy announcements, or at least making it look like he's making some kind of a policy announcement. There we go. Eddie's back.
Sorry about that.
So, he's starting to, as I was saying, to make some kind of a policy announcement here or there. He's peeling back the orange piece by piece, and I'm sure he wants to wait until the roots drop before jumping in with both feet. But it's he still seems to be very angry. I heard him referred to today again on one of the news channels as an angry man, and he is coming across that way. And he's sending out one of his MPs, his ethics critic, to handle the Carney issue at the moment. He has raised it a couple of times as well, but they're really focusing on the ethics critic now, and rightly so. That's he's the ethics critic. So, but Poilievre, I don't know. Poilievre, I think, is today. I saw some of the video of him, and he was. in Sudbury, talking about finally getting a major resource development underway in northern Ontario that's been kicking around for years. But he's going to push it forward. But he looks like he's somewhat distracted. And I think the distraction is the Carney coming out of really nowhere with the sort of win that he had. What was it, 82.9% of the votes cast for the Liberal leadership? So, that's a solid win. And all of a sudden see your line going down and their line going up and open up 5%. 5% still well within margin of error on most polls. But it's going in the right direction. And right now, the Cons line is not going in the right direction. They've got to be scrambling.
Yes, absolutely. I think he's a little gobsmacked. I think, just besides Poilievre, not sure how to respond to the citizens of Canada, not to show worry. He's not doing a very good job of it. You just look at his body language. It almost looks that he feels it's a posture of being defeated, not someone who's got any momentum, and it looks like he's lost confidence in the way his body language basically shows a loss of confidence, even in the way he's speaking. So, I mean, how does the Progressive Conservatives, the entire party, try to develop a strategy that'll allow him to be confident in terms of what he's trying to speak to Canadians about? You're right. He is definitely struggling to come out with a strong message. The strength is just not there. Definitely the cockiness is not there anymore that we saw 5-6 weeks ago. That is gone. Yep. And can he function without that cockiness? Maybe that's his entire persona in terms of how he approaches stiff competition. And the competition is extremely stiff right now. I think before he might have been overconfident because he was basically speaking to a beat up horse over the last 6 years in Prime Minister Trudeau, and was taking full advantage of his gaffes and whatnot. He can't do the same anymore. All of a sudden, the football field you were playing on last week is no longer the same football field you're playing on this week, and just cannot understand the opposing team on what they're doing. And I think the entire Progressive Conservative Party is struggling to come up with a platform without sounding too Donald Trumpish in terms of just bashing consistently, because Canadians, I don't think, will put up with just constant bashing one way or the other, especially from Poilievre, if he's actually trying to win the majority of the seats in our government. You know what? Maybe we're going to see something else next week. He's still trying to come to terms with that. But like you were saying, with an upcoming election announcement, probably as early as this upcoming Monday, he and his party just do not have the luxury of time to be trying to come up with a strategy. They should have already forecast this weeks ago. As soon as Prime Minister Trudeau resigned, they should have been formulating a plan and a strategy around knocking Mr. Carney off his Prime Minister Carney off his horse. They haven't done so, and the horse just keeps on running away from them. He just doesn't look like he's got any sort of swag or confidence about him when he speaks nowadays.
No, today, one shot I saw of him, he looked kind of drawn in the face. 3 things have happened. Trudeau resigned earlier than what he thought would happen. Poilievre and his back room were counting on taking Trudeau on in the next election.
Yep.
Then you have Carney coming in the landslide victory to take over the leadership. And in the first 6 days, one thing he did do was axe the tax. So you've got Trudeau gone, the tax now axed, and he has nowhere to go. Like, we talked a couple of weeks ago about when the polls started moving a bit, about him pivoting and trying to pivot. Well, and then on top of it, the third thing is the fact that you have the U.S. president issue and the trade wars as a result. So he's got, he's obviously over the years taken hints from the Republicans or borrowed some of what they were doing to ramp up on this side of the border. And that's blowing up in his face. So he's had three things blow up in his face. I don't know if he can recover. I think we're going to have a snap election. I think the Liberals will win. Probably they're going to win a majority government.
Yeah. And you know what? The 338 Canada, as you mentioned earlier on, just brought up their federal projections.
Yep.
We have the Liberal Party of Canada winning a majority.
Yep. There you go.
177 votes, 177 seats for them. The Conservatives with 132, Bloc 25, NDP 7. So the Liberal gains come at the expense also of the Bloc Québécois in Quebec, as a matter of fact.
Right. Yeah.
So he's picked up votes in Quebec. There seems to be a definite swing towards the Liberal Party right across the board. All provinces have the PC have lost votes, and I think it was six seats in Quebec. The Bloc Québécois lost, according to this particular projection. So it very well may be a liberal win. And I remember many episodes ago, Gary, when you had said, boy, the Progressive Conservatives look unbeatable. They've got a 22-point lead. How will the Liberals ever overcome this? Well, here we are today, right?
Yep, here we are. Yeah. Deborah says Poilievre is trying to play the same negativity game Trump did. Unfortunately for him, Canadians are not so easily manipulated. And Monel says Canadians have had enough with negativity. I actually heard him parrot T-Rump's words. There you go. That's the other side of it. He's got what's taking place now in the U.S. going against him, and it's starting. And say what you want about Carney, and I'm not by any means suggesting I'm a Carney fanboy, because I'm still on the fence as to what way I'm going. I've been impressed with the first 6 days. It's been a no-nonsense, business-like approach, something that's been sorely missing in Ottawa for the last decade.
Yep.
Sorely missing. So, and I think people are noticing that as well, and they see that, calm, steady approach. And if you recall, before the leadership vote was announced, a number of people were saying about, Carney's going to have a very business-like, straightforward approach to the leadership. And so far, he's off to that start. So, and he's managed to bring candidates back into the fold who, while Trudeau was there, had announced that they were not going to reoffer. Mm-hmm. And he reached out to a number of these candidates personally. I guess he looked at them and said, I think they'd be good for my team, and talked to them. And you have a number of them now saying, yeah, I'm going to reoffer. And I'm reoffering. If Mark Carney wins, I'm reoffering. And they're there. They're reoffering. So it's Polyev and the Conservatives have a real problem. And even this whole thing, the average Canadian doesn't really know what goes on in the background with the media or care. And, you know, I get that. But this may come back to bite them in the butt big time as well. In you know, as far as trying to tightly control the message.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, if Carney drops the writ on Sunday, the last numbers I saw, the Conservatives have more candidates in place. So I think Conservatives had 200 and some odd candidates already nominated, and the Liberals have, it was 100 and something. I can't remember the exact figure, but 100 and something. So there's going to be some mad scrambling to get candidates nominated ASAP and get the signs made and everything and get out in the community and start going from there. But I know there are things going on within the Conservative Party, like there's one riding in particular I'm aware of where there were 3 candidates who said they were going after the Conservative nomination. And 3 good candidates. One candidate dropped out back in August because he was told by somebody from the party's head office to give it up. We already have somebody for that riding. We're going to bring somebody in. Yes, they're from outside at the moment, but they're well known. Okay. The other 2 candidates have still been out there banging on doors. They haven't received any phone calls or any indication. So they're still out there trying to drum up support from within the party base. And there's no word yet on a nomination meeting or how that's even going to, how that's going to unfold. So, that's one riding. I'm sure there are a few more across the country, and maybe some of the, they have 200 and some odd candidates. Maybe the balance of the candidates, maybe 25% of the ridings where they still have to nominate candidates, maybe they have the selected few. Who knows? But it's certainly not doing anything to promote loyalty within the party. The riding association president for this particular riding I was talking about has resigned. Said, A, I can't get a straight answer, and B, the way it's being handled, I don't think it's fair to the people who have spent the past year trying to drum up support for the nomination. So,
well,
I think
a lot's going to happen. A lot's going to happen as of Monday for sure.
Yep. So I really think as much as they're trying to throw mud at Carney and the Liberals and see if it'll stick, I think that they're going to find that there's going to be mud, but it's going to be coming from within the party, being thrown back at them, and it's probably going to stick. And let's see, we have Joe chiming in on this. The Conservative Party is breaking from tradition and will not be allowing media on board planes and buses to cover Pierre Poilievre's election campaign. Why? What's he hiding? Well, there's the other side of the story in the fact that they're after Carney and potential conflicts of interest, and yet Poilievre has yet to get security clearance. All of the other leaders have security clearance, and Carney, in a response while he was overseas to a question about his blind trust, said, I am ahead of the game. The rules say 120 days after. And he said, everything has been filed. It was filed 3 or 4 days ago, and it's under review. And he said, really, I'm following along, but you have somebody who wants to be the Prime Minister. And you know what? He wouldn't be able to come over here today and discuss with the President of France and the Prime Minister of Britain issues that we have discussed, because he doesn't have a security clearance.
True too.
Yeah, it is. How do you run as prime? And he said, Carney said, I went through a 2-week period of getting my security clearance, and it, it was issued. How do you run for the leader of a country and not have a security clearance and find all sorts of excuses? So, again, and maybe that's why he's got his ethics critic out there throwing the snowballs as far as the conflicts of interest are concerned, because he doesn't want to get pulled in and have to address this somehow. There's, Joe's.
There's a rock. Look over there while he's trying to do something on this side, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whose playbook is that?
Yeah, exactly. So there, Joe's right. What's he hiding?
Yeah.
And so anyway, well, a lot of questions, Eddie.
Yeah.
And there's going to be, I think, a flurry of activity between now and Sunday, Monday of next week. And there's probably a lot of sidebar issues as well. It's part of the current global chaos, and it shows no signs of easing anytime soon.
Yeah.
I want to thank you who have been viewing this evening and who will view the video in the coming days. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It's helping us to grow the channel, and Eddie and I very much appreciate your support. And if you're wondering why I'm kind of chuckling here in the background, for the first time in 25 episodes, the dog decides to come in. Normally he comes in and just curls up in his little nest here. But he's there now, and I don't know if he's sneezing or what he's doing. But I don't know if you can hear him, but
I heard it.
Yeah. Yep, there he is. Okay. So, Night Talk minus the dog next week returns in 7 days. From Montreal, I'm Gary MacDonald. Good night. Good night, Eddie.
Good night, Eddie Takalik. Take care.